At the end of the day, my two primary jobs I really click with and enjoy the most above all else is Scholar and Summoner. So while this video might actually be a preemptive knee-jerk reaction, I'm making a video because I really do feel, and I'm avoiding any sensationalist terms because those really discredit an argument. I feel concerned, a little sad, and a little bit anxious about the future of my two favorite jobs going into Endwalker. In the interview done by Mr. Happy, likewise check out the full interview on his channel, absolutely. His fifth question was asked about edgy glamours. Yoshi-p's answer was, and I quote, "Currently Summoner as a job is reaching somewhat of a breaking point when it comes to the overall play mechanics, so we've halted work on edgy glamour for the time being in order to shift focus. There's a reason behind this, but we can't share the details with you at the moment. When the time comes, I'll be sure to properly share that information with everyone." So while we're not going to know the details until later, maybe even months after FanFest, unless they really spend the time during FanFest to do a deeper dive than just a skill showcase video, this concerns me. This really concerns me. To me, this reads like Summoner's Edge Eyes are going to go, and from that, I also extend it to Scholar's Fairy getting the chop, which might surprise people as from me saying that, but I really don't think it's too bold to say that because the lines of reasoning behind the Scholar and the Summoner actually, from my experiences in game over many years, they follow the same issues. So if one is probably going to get the chop and be like stated to be like outgrowing its overall mechanics, the other one's probably in the same boat. But rather than wave my hands around and not actually explain what I mean by that, let me dive into it. So in Final Fantasy XIV, there are no persistent pet classes that maintain a pet of some sort out at any given moment, other than the Scholar and Summoner. While the Machinist can summon their big Omnic Butler and the Dark Knight can summon Frey, this is extremely different than Scholar or Summoner. For Machinist and Dark Knight, you honestly barely interact with the Summoner, where Scholar and Summoner are packed with skills that depend on the Fairy or Edge Eye that are out. This causes problems, and this is going to be more of a primer than an exhaustive explanation on each, which honestly could be an hour-long analysis on each, and you know me. It would be an hour-long analysis on each. My first point is to talk about numbers, because this seems to be the most shocking to people. So what about pet potency scaling? It is well known to us old-timers that the potency of the pet is not equivalent to the potency that you yourself as the Scholar do. Physic deals 200 potency of healing, Whispering Dawn is apparently 120 potency, so I expect Whispering Dawn to tick for 30% of Physic. Physic is about 22,000 in healing, Whispering Dawn is about 4.6k. But that isn't the case. We are not seeing this 30% of Physic, and this has been a cause of confusion for the Scholar and Summoner players alike. For example, let's take 22k and multiply it by 1.3, which is 30%. That gives you 6,600. So when we're comparing 6,600 to 4.6k, we are literally only getting 70% of what I would expect to be 120 potency. Now what about Fey Blessing as another example? Fey Blessing is rated at 350 potency, so it's critting at 20k. Critting at 20k. Physic crits were at 34k, around there. So again, this is like 70%-ish of what I'd be expecting, and without a crit though, Fey Blessing is only at 12k healing. But mind you, here I'm doing exactly what I said I wouldn't. I'm going too deep. But the point is, when we get newer players to Scholar, that they generally aren't fully aware of this differential and are surprised that their Fairy's output is honestly so much less than they expected. The pet potency is significantly lower than your own potency, and so the numbers can be a little deceptive. Now let's talk about pet delay. Pet actions honestly are delayed compared to your own. Compare Machinist's Gauss Round, Ricochet spam between Heat Blasts, no delay. Now compare trying to cast Constellation with Spring Dawn, Fey Illumination after Constellation. It's not as snappy. To say it's not as snappy actually would be a insulting understatement. The delay has absolutely caused pain. Now is ghosting of actions, and that doesn't make a lot of sense until people are like, oh, that's what you mean. So let's say I have Seraph out, and right before the cutoff, so Seraph only lasts 20 seconds, so she's just about to go away, I execute the command on my character to cast Constellation. But now we have the pet delay, the other problem we just talked about. Seraph left already though. The Constellation that I cast on my Scholar all of a sudden wasn't translated into any healing because Seraph already left. Likewise, we see this directly on Summoner, such as executing things like Enkindle, Edge Command 1 and 2, and then immediately summon Bahamut. The actions that didn't already go off before Bahamut went, those actions that you cast on your Summoner are literally gone. I want to talk about a variety of pets, and while maybe some people don't consider this a problem, I actually am somewhat saddened still. Okay, I'm really sad still. Eos and Celine used to be two very different fairies with two very different skill sets. Sure, at the end of the day, you can all have them use Embrace, but their other actions were different in the past. Celine basically got the axe, and Eos was left as the only option. Similar for that, Summoner has only two pet options outside of incredibly fringe situations where, yes, Titan Shield can be useful. I make that argument and I stand by that. But even top tier summoners often don't switch and instead question why the healers didn't do their job properly. And honestly, that's a fair question to ask. If no one messed up a mechanic and you did die to something that you shouldn't die to, where's the healing? So usually it is flat out in any fight like a trial or a raid if it is out for anything single target. Garuda, anything AoE. So from a playstyle perspective, is having another pet really all that special anymore? Not really. Right now there is not truly a choice or variety. And likewise there are more problems, but I'm not going to even try to go into the same depth because I want to keep this video condensed. Time to set up and recover from death is requiring respawning a pet at the very least. It is better now than it was in the past with like the huge cast times, but back then dying back in the day was so agonizing, or dissipation used to be such a pain. Other things like losing range on a pet or losing control on a pet, which is still an issue for me because I miss when I could actually direct with macros my fairy to heal a particular target. Like I never needed to use like Aether Pact to direct my fairy to heal the tank. Instead now we have Seraph hitting like random DPS that took chip damage with Constellation. I'm like, why? I want this on the tank, but that was definitely another problem. I do feel that. The next thing is loss of parallel control on pets. You used to be able to cast something like Resurrection, which has a stupidly long cast, as everyone knows, and issue commands to the pet without problem. That was removed this expansion, and even at the tail end of the expansion, this is still one of my biggest gripes with Scholar right now, and how it changed. So I just rattled off like 10 very real problems with pets without even diving that deep. Like I didn't think very hard on getting those problems out. So is it really any wonder that the development team wants to remove them? And I mean, if I'm being honest, as much as it pains me to say, no, it doesn't surprise me. I can see exactly why yoshi-p put it as currently Summoner as a job, and Scholar probably is in there, is reaching somewhat of a breaking point when it comes to overall play mechanics. As much as it genuinely pains me, I can see exactly what is meant by this, which I take utterly zero joy in saying because I love pet classes. Now here's where we have the turnaround, which will shock people. We see Scholar and Summoner without pets in the game today, and people might not be happy with what I have to say. Current forms of PvP for Scholar has it where they can't summon Seraph or any fairy at all. You don't have a fairy. There is no fairy in the current PvP Scholar kit at all. Instead, it's focused on barriers and skills to temporarily augment their healing output, like enhance it, basically. Pretty much that's it. But I'm gonna say that for me personally, it did kill a lot of the entire reason I play Scholar, and that's why me doing Scholar in PvP isn't a thing you've seen on this channel yet, is it? Like honestly, I need that fairy to live my fantasy. It's a huge part of the kit. Now I look at the Summoner, and the Summoner plays without any sort of pet skills, no Enkindle in PvP, no edgy commands. It's all their own kit, and then they pop into Dreadworm Trance without even Bahamut in the background, and then they move into Phoenix Trance, and there isn't even a Phoenix Bird, instead just augmented Summoner skills. Which I can see why there's no Bahamut and Phoenix because they are so large and that might be distracting in PvP, but at the same point of time, that kind of destroys the fantasy for me at least. And while people might be like, but that's PvP, when you see that response from yoshi-p though, that might be exactly what we're seeing in Endwalker, and this is actually factually a form of Scholar and Summoner we have right now, as I'm making this video right now, in-game, playable today. A Scholar with no fairy and a Summoner with no pets at all. And does it resolve the problems of ghosting skills, pet scaling, and the rest mentioned before? Sadly, from a design perspective, it absolutely does. I'm just going to cut off this video pretty early, but honestly, this has left me, and I'm trying to avoid any sensational words because I feel that they debunk any credibility of an argument, but I'm anxious and saddened right now because, and it's not me mincing words because I've fallen in love with the Scholar and Summoner since like 2013. They have been my thing. I guess we're just going to have to see how this pans out. I'm honestly a little scared for my main and Endwalker, honestly, just from this one answer, but yeah.